Hi, everybody. My name is JG Stahl. I'm one of the partner managers at Knime, and I want to welcome everybody to this exciting breakout session that is facilitated by our partner, Clarkson Consulting. So let me introduce you to Maggie Seeds and Dana Larson. We're going to tell you more about how they are helping their customers to manage profitability across their customers and products using simulation. You'll see it's a really effective use case of the guided analytics functionality in Knime. So without further ado, Maggie, please take it away.
Great, thank you, JG. Everyone, welcome to our session. I know we've got some folks joining in a little bit later from the summit. I hope we've all been enjoying all those presentations today. So a couple of housekeeping things as we get started here. Feel free to post in the chat and the Q&A in the window you see here so that you can take part in the discussion. I would love for everyone to introduce themselves and let us know where you're tuning in from throughout the session. As well, if there are questions throughout, please feel free to enter them throughout the presentation. Dana and I will both be keeping an eye on the Q&A tab as we go so we can answer questions throughout, and we'll also leave time for Q&A at the end. So moving on, we're gonna cover off, so I'm Maggie Seeds and Dana Larson is joining me. She's our sales and marketing analytics lead at Clarkston Consulting, and I'm a manager in the practice. And so on the next slide, you'll give a brief introduction to Clarkson Consulting. Our firm does SAP and LIMS implementations, as well as lots of other software implementation, as well as operational and management consulting services. So we do a lot in quality and regulatory work, supply chain, sales and marketing, innovation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and analytics. So Dana and I are part of what we call the Insights to Action team, because it's really about driving action and driving changes in the business due to what we find through insights. So that'll be a theme that you'll hear throughout the presentation, is how can we make decisions and uncover insights that can lead to actions and provide value to the business. So on the next slide, we'll see the agenda. Today, we're going to talk through profitability. So we're going to talk through the P&L and then thinking about profitability from a lens of customer as well as product. So this breakout session, we're going to talk through a couple of use cases that Dana and I have seen out at various clients in the last couple of years. And we'll touch on themes of what and why should we be doing more with analytics when it comes to customer and product profitability, as well as how we can get there. So we'll talk through a couple of different phases of analytics maturity with a focus on sales and marketing and how we can drive profitability. So how can we get there? We'll break it down into 4 phases: diagnosing, evaluating, simulating, and optimizing. So on the next slide. Hi, everyone. It looks like we've got a few folks joining in now. Just we welcome everyone, and we'd love for you to share your location, where you're tuning in from in the chat feature, as well as using the Q&A throughout the entire session. So first poll question is, where is your company today in analytics maturity? So are you just getting started? Do you have pockets of analytics in the organization, but not quite organization-wide? Are you in an organization-wide having success stories across teams, or even established for automation and optimization? And I'll have Dana, if you'll flip over to the answers, we can see results coming in live. Everyone, the poll is beside the chat function at the top. There's a poll option, so you can fill in where your company is currently in terms of analytics maturity. All right, Dana, do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah. Okay.
You can take over.
So, sounds good. So the second one, we're curious, is growth in analytics a priority for your organization right now? And just a simple yes, no. So we can flip to the second question and get some live responses. Great to see that that's majority yes.
Yeah, a lot of yeses. I know that it's been a crazy year for a lot of businesses, but that's something that we've seen in conversations with our clients, that there is, if there's something to invest in, analytics is definitely high on the list at this point.
Definitely. All right, moving on to number 3. So does your organization or your team rely on out-of-the-box solutions for most of your analytics, or do you tend to create those yourself? So both of the extremes of the question, and then a meet in the middle with both. Flip to that question as well.
Great, we got a lot of hands-on folks in the audience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, and we'll move over to our last one. This is more of a free text example. What types of analyses is everyone doing potentially outside of those function-specific softwares?
Knime, that's great. These are all tool sets. So curious, and the reason we ask about software specific is some of our clients, if you have a very specific question, if you want a particular field forecasted, or if you want customer segmentation or something like that, then sometimes they'll seek out specific tools to do so. And so part of what Dana and I like to do is figure out how we can do more with data and analytics in addition to those tools. And so I think there's various types of analytics that we encourage our clients take on, even if there are specific tools in place. Yep,
definitely. All right. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. Super interesting. So we will now get into kind of the bulk of what the structure of this presentation will be. And as Maggie touched on, we will be journeying across these building blocks over the next half an hour. So we're going to start with what an organization looks like at the diagnosing level. So what does an organization look like at the diagnosing level, and what activities might they be doing? So a start to this in the context of sales and marketing might be an organization purchasing point of sale data. So this point of sale data would be from like a SPINS or IRI or Nielsen, and it's showing consumption based on customer or product within a store. So the remainder of these bullets I'm going to kind of discuss under the context of a client example. So speaking towards the second point, we had a client who saw within their point of sale data that they had incremental volume occurring when there was no promotional activity within the store. And so this is a really good example of our client recognizing that something was off with the data and that there could be some room for analysis and potentially reconciling what they would expect in their internal data to actually what was happening in the store. So this client recognized that analysis could be helpful, and where we landed was remodeling their volume data. So on the technical side, we ended up using a regression analysis. And with this, we were able to attribute different factors. So promotional factors like price reductions, and non-promotional factors like seasonality or product trends. We were able to attribute all of those different things to total volume. And so we could forecast the total volume that we got from the point of sale data because we were confident that that was accurate. It was really just the breakdown between base volume and incremental volume. So once we had a sound forecast for that total volume, we could then carve out what was incremental volume, and we could do so only when we knew that there was promotional activity occurring in store. So some other examples of what might be helpful at the diagnosing level in terms of analysis is that organizations might recognize that it's important to measure lift of their promotions, getting towards ROI. Additionally, analysis might be helpful to monitor retailer adherence to promotional plans and also look at overall promotional effectiveness. So the final point here on this slide is diagnosing organizations can recognize what can be done with the outputs from this analysis. And as Maggie said, a theme is kind of insights to action. So if you do the analysis, it's really important to know what can be done with it. So for our client, the goal of this analysis was or the goal of this project was to use the remodeled data and then feed this data into their TPM system. And so with that, the organization could evaluate promotional plans by customer and then evaluate how competitor activity was affecting their promotions. Additionally, organizations might use analysis to venture into overall promotional effectiveness and evaluating ROI. So when we think of this end-to-end process of data prep to modeling to evaluating results, Knime is a great tool of what can take you on this entire journey in understanding kind of what an analytics project looks like start to finish. So that's the diagnosing level, and then I will hand it over to Maggie to get into evaluating.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think some of those later bullets that Dana was just reviewing started to think about how we can evaluate. So looking at things like retailer adherence to promotional plans, you can begin to look and develop things like customer scorecards to see how customers and products are performing across your entire network. And so this is a more advanced stage of maturity, which we'll call evaluating. And it's, you know, now that you've got your data together, you've got trust in the data from your organization. We all know that that can be a problem from time to time. And now you've got it all at your fingertips. So it's really getting in and being able to do some analysis. So we wanted to share another example from a different client where, and this, we're going to call it Dana and Maggie's confectionery shop data. So on the next slide, you'll see two graphs. Basically, we're manufacturers of all of these different types of sweets, and we have 100 customers, and so our top 50 are in the top tree map, and our bottom 50 are in the bottom tree map. And we did all of our data prep in Knime, and then shot the results over to Power BI to view and visualize the data in this scenario. And so what we've got on top is our top customers with profitability, and the bottom group is our underperformers in terms of profitability. And so this is kind of where we start all of our projects, is let's look at the data, let's see patterns that are emerging in this data profiling process. So feel free to throw in the chat, what questions do you have when you look at this data set? Do you see any differences between the top performers and underperformers in terms of product mix? I'll share one of the first things that we asked was, okay, obviously jelly beans is a big part of, you know, it's over 50% of the product mix of our top performers. Whereas for our underperformers, it's only a third. So that right there could be a big chunk. So let's dig in further and see what's the profitability of all of these different products. We see jelly beans and chocolate bars are consistently the top two in sales for both groups, but let's take a look at the profitability of each product. So on the next slide, you'll see we have ranked the profitability just in a simple bar chart here, but jelly beans is our most profitable product. So that makes sense that our most profitable customers are selling the most jelly beans. And so as we look down the list, we go through and we're using color here to designate high to low profitability. We can see chocolate bars is kind of in the middle of the pack. It's, you know, it's not the best, it's not the worst, but definitely somewhere in the middle. And then we can also see further down the list, we've got some more complicated types of products, hot chocolate bombs, candied apples, those types of things are going to require more ingredients, more time, and are going to cost more. So they're going to have a negative effect on our profit margin. So if we go back to our tree maps now, with that understanding of how color plays a role, we can see not only do jelly beans and chocolate bars really make a difference here based on their profitability, but we can also see things like hot chocolate bombs in the bottom group are making up 11% of the product mix, whereas it's only 1.8% of product mix in our top customer group. So we see some opportunities here. We can dig in further and ask more questions. We can then, you know, go to other teams and ask, you know, hey, is there anything we can do to increase the profitability of hot chocolate bombs? Maybe it's a seasonal good and we're really insistent on pushing it in this group of customers. We're not going to not offer it, but how can we make it more profitable? Or can we put more trade dollars to chocolate bars in to jelly beans in our underperformers to make that a bigger share of their product mix to match demand and sell more and increase our revenue at those lower, those underperforming customers. So being able to prepare the data and then share it across teams. I know a lot of organizations are set up where, you know, each account manager has their list of customers and they manage them accordingly. But when you can really open it up and get data from other teams, break down some of those data silos, then you can uncover more opportunities. And then also kind of standardize across the board. Maybe one account manager finds, you know, something that's really working for them, and we can then through sharing some of that data, be able to share some of those best practices even further. So moving on to simulating, which is our next kind of building block in our analytics maturity when we're thinking about profitability. So as an analyst, I might ask myself questions like, how can I get to a certain profit margin on this customer? I've got this target and I'm trying to hit it. What will a 5% increase in trade dollars do to my profit margin as a whole across this range of customers? How much can I affect profit margin if I reduce my damages by 10%? So these were all questions that our client was asking us, or questions that their sales team had when they were looking at their data. And so, and again, I mean, probably a familiar scenario. They had purchased data from, I think, Nielsen in this scenario, and so, you know, buying the data is not the end result, right? That's really just step one. So we want to ask all these questions of our data. So we got together, and on the next slide, you'll see we thought, okay, well, P&L really affects all the teams in the business. We've got finance, sales and marketing, supply chain are all keenly interested in how the P&L is doing, the profit and loss statement. So what we see here, a typical P&L, we've got gross sales at the top, and then everything from gross sales to net sales are expenses that are attempting to improve our gross sales. So we've got things like discounts, we've got, you know, we want to limit damages, deductions, and returns. We've got trade spend, which promotion or effective trade is always hoping to sell more product. And then things like distribution or slotting allowance. And then below net sales, we have all of our expenses of doing business. So the cost of the product, any logistics, delivery expenses, brokerage, things like that. And at the bottom, we have our product margin and our net product margin percent. So what we worked through with the team, we had a couple workshops and we brainstormed this and we said, all right, let's try something. Let's do a small scale proof of value. And let's see if we can predict a future state P&L based on all of our data. So we took it in a couple parts. We first used a machine learning model to predict cases sold. So using our trade dollars, slotting, basically everything above net sales, as well as product data, customer data, sales history, and seasonality. So we took that all into consideration. And then from that first result, we actually used that as an input to another model. Most of the items like cost and brokerage, they had simple equations for that were in a system somewhere, but delivery expense was pretty variable. They didn't have it. There was no simple equation to get there. So we said, okay, let's model that too. So we took all of the historical delivery expense data and we combined it using our predicted cases sold by both weight and by volume. And then we combine that with location information and logistics data to predict the delivery expense as well. And so once we have those two predicted values, we can then plug in all of the other data to the P&L and do some simple math. All of the P&L math is very straightforward, right? Just plus minus data. But we plug that all in and we now have our, all of our pieces of data. And so from here, we wanted to visualize outcomes because as an analyst, I want to see, especially when I think about simulation, I think it's very important to be able to see, okay, what did I just try? What else can I try? And be able to compare them all of the results together. So we visualized both in Knime and the web portal as well as Power BI. And then from there, I think the coolest part about simulation, and as we get into simulation and optimization, is that the action part is really emphasized. So the goal of all of this is to be hands-on, to deliver your analysts a tool that they can play with and try things and use their experience to then say, well, we usually start with about this much. Let's see how that looks and compare it. So it's the action steps are very clear with simulation tools. So on the next slide, we've got a wireframe of our approach. So we have our user interface in the Knime web portal. which was easy to design with the widgets. And then from all of the user inputs, we take inputs for all of those items above net sales. So trade dollars, distribution allowance, et cetera. And then we use all of those inputs to run against our model to predict cases sold by customer, product ID or SKU, and month. And then take that input and predict our delivery expense, but at the same level of granularity. And then all of this is just happening on the Knime server where our finalized models are stored. And then we output back to the web portal with a full P&L. And then we have also options to send over to Power BI for analysis or download as you need. So we'll get a closer view on the next slide. Where we have two different simulations that an analyst would run. So on the left in simulation 1, we have an analyst who, I don't know if anybody is familiar with Ingles. I'm from North Carolina, so it's an East Coast food chain, or sorry, supermarket chain. So let's say Ingles is selling chocolate bars in May 2020. And I, as the analyst, know that the typical amount for trade dollars that we put into that category with this retailer is $2,000 a month here. So, and just to keep a simple example, we'll leave 0 for all of the returns and deductions and everything like that. So when I click next, all of my machine learning algorithms run and my P&L is created. So I've predicted that I've sold about 11,000 cases. I've got my trade dollars there, as you can see. And so my net sales comes to about $115,000. And then I plug in all my costs and my delivery expense prediction, and then any other expenses that I've got. So I get a net profit of almost $50,000 at a 41% profit margin. So that's great. That's pretty standard quo, or status quo. That's what we're anticipating to see. So that helps with validation, right, and building trust in the tool. And so then as an analyst, I say, okay, well, what if we upped that? What if we increase our trade spend from $2,000 to $5,000? So now we're looking on the right at simulation 2. And so I run everything else the same, but if I increase my trade spend, what does that do for me? And this is now taking into account all of the data. We're doing we have a customer segmentation built in as a data element to this. And we have all of these kind of accounted for. So I'm not only limited to what I've done at Ingles in the past, but I get the whole breadth of my data available to see how we're predicted to do. So with just $3,000 more in trade, we sell many more cases sold. So cases go up to 14,000. Our net sales then is nearly 150,000. So a major jump. Our costs are higher. And then we look at the delivery expense and plug all of that information in. And so as a net profit, though, we're over $60,000. So we've gained a lot in profit margin. And so this is a no-brainer. It's a clear next step. Let's go ahead and spend the money, and then let's validate all of this and keep track of those results and improve as we go. And one thing to point out here in this example, even though our net profit increased, our net profit margin actually decreased. So this is an interesting thing that maybe the supply chain team wants to take a closer look and see why, when we're selling more, our costs are growing as a percent. So something to keep in mind as well is allowing your users to have all of the parameters they need to maximize toward something. So do we want to maximize toward revenue or cases sold? Are we trying to minimize costs? Are we trying to maximize profit or profit margin? All of these questions your analyst should have as parameters to play with. So moving on, I'll turn it back over to Dana to talk about the next maturity beyond simulating.
Sounds good. So the final building block that we're going to be talking about here is optimizing. And so really the difference from moving from simulation to optimization is that you're now tinkering with the features to maximize towards a goal. So simulation and scenario planning, like Maggie just gave the examples of, are really the input to when you do optimization. You work through iterations of analyses and you gauge the performance and the success of your analyses based on that target metric. So this might be hitting a certain KPI or maximizing revenue, volume, or margin goals. So some questions that an analyst might ask in an optimization scenario are, which customer will benefit the most from a trade spend increase? how much money do I need to invest and where to hit a revenue target? And what do trade dollars need to be to maximize net profit? So the difference from the simulating examples to the optimizing examples is you're really moving away from that quantitative kind of scenario plan, and you're moving towards a more qualitative goal. So to conclude with optimization, we wanted to discuss how important change management is overall within advanced analytics. And luckily, something like optimization is a really great way to assist in this. So the example Maggie went through is a success story of how a simulator tool became a quick win for an organization. And that's kind of what you see as that headline of the slide. So analysts were able to be hands-on with the tool and use their expertise and change the trade budget and things like that to then get a more favorable result for the organization. And then executives are able to see what an end-to-end process looks like for an analytics project. So the combination of these two things really act as two different angles to build buy-in in advanced analytics across an organization. Maggie mentioned at the beginning that we call ourselves the Insights to Action group, and we do really believe that value in analytics is really only created when action is taken. And so something like a simulator where you have a quick win with an actionable result, so in this case, upping the trade budget by $3,000 for a pretty large increase in net profit. This project was really a proof of value of how analytics can function within an organization and how an organization can make a quick, pretty easy decision because of optimizing towards a goal and using analytics as a tool. So in addition, a scenario like optimization is really most successful when subject matter expertise is incorporated. So something like a simulation tool is not something to take away an analyst's say or take over what they do. It's really to give them an elevated way to uncover those insights. And so having analysts hands-on with a tool to demonstrate that they are needed just as much as the tool is really a great way to elevate change management and again, create that buy-in at multiple levels. So with that, we want to thank you for your time, and we can now open it up to questions.
Yeah, and feel free to submit your questions either via the chat feature or the Q&A. And we're keeping an eye on it as we go through.
That's good. And as hopefully we're going to get some questions in, but Maggie and Dana, thank you very much for the insights. I love the name of your group, Insights to Actions, and pretty excited that Knime is part of making sure that you can take those actions. One other thing I want to mention about Clarkston is they have a lot of experience with SAP, and you've heard today about that Theobald integration. So we have the tools, they have the knowledge in order to bring that together. I think we do have a question I see. Did you encounter any internal resistance when implementing these projects? If so, how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think change management is critical. I think has an unfortunate reputation of kind of being left for last or not being considered crucial throughout the project, but it really is important. I think in the summit yesterday, there was some talk of, we as data scientists can build the coolest models in the world, but unless they're actually being used, then you have no benefit from it. So I think hesitation or roadblocks, not so much, but with these types of quick win proof of value projects, the goal is to get exposure and to say, as a data scientist, I'm sure we've all been there where you want to optimize and you could spend 3 months optimizing to get that extra percentage point of accuracy increase. But really focusing on stepping back from that, seeing the big picture. We really want to show an end-to-end project or product so that we can so that everyone in the room can understand it. So it doesn't have to be perfect yet. Let's just make sure it's working, and then we can come back and refine as we go and add in, scale as we go as well. So I think it's always tricky. And this one actually, it was very cool because it spans finance, supply chain, sales and marketing, other teams, talking about the P&L really involves the whole business, but that also involves more people, right? That involves more teams and more decision makers who have to get on board. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth considering as we go. The way that we do it is we always have checkpoints like once a month, usually to get all of the people with decision rights in the room with eyes on progress, seeing how we're going, having them involved in the process. I think having people view your work when it's half done is always, for me, is always intimidating, but I think it really is important to make sure that you're all aligned on the direction that you're headed.
Yeah, Maggie, to build off of that too, I think the checkpoint meetings is what I was going to touch on. And to have those meetings, it really helps to not treat analytics as this black box where others outside of those who are actually just doing the data work don't see it as this kind of magic that's happening. So getting the business folks engaged and helping to create a business understanding of what these models do is, I've found to be important in change management.
Yeah, one of the other things that we've seemed to find is that people are often as interested in what's driving the model as they are in the result. So we really put a focus on seeing what are the key factors that are driving each decision made and being able to share that back with the analysts as well. So I think having that hands-on visibility and transparency, I think, can help build that change management as well.
Yeah, and Maggie, another thing, and this during the session yesterday, this came up. You talked about having a sponsor in the organization, which we see as well with a lot of our customers, with a lot of our partners. That is critical. So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, having a champion goes a long way. So for us, that's always, being in consulting, having someone on the client team who's really passionate about it, who drives it. What we see a lot is there will be kind of an internal group of data stewards or a center of excellence or whatever fun names people come up with, but having people who have an interest. And I think there's always plenty of people in organizations who have an interest in data, in the latest technology, who want to be a part of this and who want to grow in skills, and tapping into the passion of that group. But then having those connections with executives or whoever has decision rights and the ability to invest is also critical. But having somebody who really cares driving goes a long way.
Yeah, this also comes back to the maturity, right, of the organization, where they are, and like how much education that still needs to happen within the organization. So one of the things that Michael, like Knime CEO, referenced that was yesterday, that he sees like a slow maturing of customers, right, when it comes to data science. Is that something that you see as well?
Yeah, we've been seeing that. One way that we're seeing it come to life is that we're seeing a lot of folks who have pockets of analytics, and as one of our poll questions, I think that was a strong answer, have pockets of analytics going on. Maybe people are using different tool sets, some coding, some using Knime, some using visualization only. And I think as the snowball grows and there's more analytics happening in different ways in different teams, the executive teams are starting to say, oh, okay, hold on, we need to take a step back and build a foundation. We need to, talk about data lakes and storage and processing power, and we need to think about our architecture, think about the tool sets, the processes that we have, the skill sets we have and want for future growth. Do we have everything in place that we need to answer business questions tomorrow? So I think we're seeing, and that's one of the services we offer as well as data strategy and roadmaps, and we're seeing a lot of activity with that right now. I think as people envision where they want to be next year.
Yeah, and I think what you guys did, right, with the profitability calculator, I think involving like the different teams within the organization, right? So people, right, because it could be scary, right, to have a data science team and you work out all these models, and then for them to see what comes out there and like get that trust, as you mentioned. But I think some of the things that you are doing looks like very successfully is that agile way. Get them along step by step. I think that like that's what we see, that those are the most successful implementations, where right you get people along all the way. It's a journey, right? It's not a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's really a marathon to get them along. So really excited to see how you guys are using the guided analytics, right, or the web portal in order to like make it a little bit scary, make it a little bit more practical to do that. So as you like went through that, right, building out that profitability calculator, what was the like, can you share into like what things that were really revealing to you as you went through that perhaps was a little bit surprise?
Yeah, one thing that I think was a good takeaway for the team as they thought about building out additional tools like this was some of the features that we provided outside of their typical. So, we had product and customer data, and then we brought in a holiday calendar as well to bring in features like day before a holiday, day after, number of business days in the week, in the month, those types of things. Those helped our model pick up a lot of the changes to seasonality as well. So having kind of a analyst playground of data sets, if you will, that we can then, we as Clarkston, we share those data sets on all of our projects. There's a couple base data sets or integrations with like weather data or other things that we can use. And so, when one team builds excellent data and it becomes useful, go ahead and share that with the rest of the organization. Say, and through some of those data steward groups or whatever it is, be able to share some of those wins and be able to stand on each other's shoulders, I think can go a long way.
Yeah, that's good. And then like one remaining question from me is like that example that you showed, like how customer specific is it and how easy is that to generalize that? So if you go to different customers, or if some customers are listening right now to say, hey, how hard would it be to do that for our company?
Yeah, I think the neat thing with Knime is that everything's built out. So it's actually pretty easy to templatize things, to go back through. I know Dana's done this a few times as well, is go back through and say, okay, now I want to run this for a different type of data or different type of data. Dana, you did that with your forecasting, so the regression that you were talking about in the first example, right?
Yeah. So something that can be built off of kind of an industry standard set of data. So I touched on the point of sale data. That'll be pretty standard across the board, no matter if you are a candy manufacturer or whatever it may be. So you're going to have a product that's sold, a customer that it's sold at, an average price, and a total volume sold. Most breakdowns will also have base and incremental volume as well. But in our case, that's what we were looking to reforecast. So the input to the model that we built, the linear regression model, was basically just that standard date, product, customer, price, total volume. And then we built some of our own factors to include things like product trend or seasonality that could give the model some sort of behavior as to how the volume was behaving. And so I think that's a good example of kind of templatizing a model where you can have standard features or things that are easier to generate, like seasonality. And then you have this plug and play data where it's really a few key attributes that can be used across really any organization, as long as they have their own point of sale data. So that's a good example of something being kind of industry standard into a more template model.
Oh, that's great. And like with that, we're going to wrap it up. Maggie and Dana, thank you very much. I think you showed off like what you guys can do, all from the strategy down to like the really nitty gritty and very pragmatic things that you can do and do for your customers. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this session. We hope to see you tomorrow for a community workshop. So we have 12 pretty exciting workshops. So hope to see you there. And with that, thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.